The Endeavour cruised through the vastness of space, its engines humming softly in the cold, dark void. Captain Helena Merck, a veteran of deep space exploration, gazed out of the panoramic view screen at the endless sea of stars. Her crew, a seasoned group of explorers and scientists, were busy at their stations, monitoring the ship's systems and the surrounding cosmos. "Captain, we're picking up an anomaly on the long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Diaz, her eyes fixed on the blinking screen in front of her. Helena leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Define anomaly, Lieutenant." Diaz hesitated, her fingers dancing over the controls. "It's hard to describe. It's like a void, but massive. It's swallowing the light from the surrounding stars." The captain turned to Dr. Liam Zheng, the ship's chief scientist, who was already poring over the data. "Your thoughts, Doctor?" Zheng adjusted his glasses, his eyes reflecting the complex data streams on his monitor. "It's unlike anything we've seen before. If I didn't know better, I'd say it's a black hole, but it's different." The crew fell silent, the gravity of the situation settling in. The ship's comms officer, Ensign Harper, broke the silence with a nervous joke. "Maybe it's a giant cosmic vacuum cleaner, keeping the universe tidy." This elicited a few strained chuckles around the room, breaking the tension momentarily. Captain Merck smiled briefly before returning her gaze to the view screen. "Set a course, Lieutenant. Let's get a closer look at this cosmic vacuum cleaner." As the Endeavour changed course, the chatter among the crew members subsided, replaced by a sense of unease. The anomaly loomed larger on the view screen, a dark spot amidst the sea of stars, its edges swirling mysteriously. "Getting some weird readings here, Captain," said Diaz, her voice said with concern. "It's like the anomaly is affecting our instruments." Helena frowned, her mind racing with possibilities. "Keep an eye on it, Lieutenant. Everyone stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The ship edged closer, the anomaly growing ever larger, its presence ominous and foreboding. Inside the Endeavour, the crew moved with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, aware that they were on the brink of a discovery that could redefine their understanding of the universe. "Look at that," whispered Zheng, almost to himself. "It's beautiful and terrifying all at once." Helena nodded in agreement, her eyes never leaving the view screen. The anomaly, the galactic maw, as it would come to be known, beckoned them forward, its secrets hidden in the darkness, waiting to be revealed. The Endeavour crept closer to the anomaly, now officially dubbed the Galactic Maw. The crew watched in awe and trepidation as the swirling darkness grew to dominate the view screen. Captain Helena Merck stood firm at the helm, her eyes reflecting the anomaly's eerie glow. "Distance to the event horizon?" Helena asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Approximately 50,000 kilometers in closing," replied Lieutenant Diaz, her hands steady on the navigation console. Dr. Liam Zheng, peering over the data on his screen, added, "There's a significant gravitational pull, but it's irregular, not like any black hole I've studied." Ensign Harper, trying to lighten the mood, quipped, "Maybe it's just happy to see us." This drew a few smirks, but the humor was short-lived. The ship shuddered slightly, an unsettling reminder of the unknown forces at play. "Stabilizers at maximum," Helena ordered, her focus unyielding. "Keep us steady, Lieutenant." Diaz nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. "Stabilizers engaged, but this thing is like a wild beast, Captain." The anomaly's pull intensified, and the Endeavour's instruments began to flicker and warp. Readings became erratic, and the familiar hum of the ship's systems took on an ominous tone. Chief Engineer Santos, monitoring the ship's systems, called out, "We're getting some strange feedback loops in the power grid. It's like the anomaly is talking to the ship." Helena glanced at Santos, her expression grim. "Do what you can to keep us running, Chief. We need all systems operational." As they edged closer, the view outside became increasingly surreal. Stars appeared to stretch and twist around the anomaly, painting a bizarre, hypnotic canvas. Zheng, his fascination overcoming his apprehension, muttered, It's like looking into the eye of God, if God were a cosmic predator. The crew fell silent, each member lost in their thoughts as they faced the unfathomable mystery ahead. The Endeavour continued its cautious approach, drawn inexorably towards the heart of the anomaly. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing several crew members off balance. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. "We've crossed the event horizon," Diaz shouted, her voice laced with a mix of fear and excitement. "We're inside the anomaly." Helena grabbed the rail, steadying herself. "Status report." Before anyone could answer, a deep, resonant sound filled the ship, a haunting chorus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The crew looked around in alarm, each wondering if they were the only ones hearing it. It's in my head," stammered Harper, his usual jovial demeanor gone. "Can you hear that?" The sound, otherworldly and indescribable, reverberated through the ship, setting the stage for the unimaginable journey that lay ahead. The Endeavour, now fully enveloped by the galactic maw, ventured deeper into the unknown, its crew facing a reality more bizarre and terrifying than any of them could have imagined. Within the shadowy embrace of the galactic maw, the Endeavour drifted, its crew grappling with the unnerving silence that had enveloped them. The ship's interior was bathed in a dim, eerie light, the anomaly's influence distorting the normal glow of the instruments. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple objects ahead," Lieutenant Diaz reported, her voice tinged with unease. They're ships, or what's left of them." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a graveyard of spacecraft, their hulls twisted and shattered, floating in the void. The remnants of various expeditions, lost to time and space. "Looks like we're not the first to RSVP to this cosmic party," Ensign Harper said, trying to mask his anxiety with humor. Dr. Zheng, his eyes wide with both fear and fascination, leaned closer to the screen. "These ships, they're from different eras. Some are pre-FTL. How is this possible?" Captain Merk remained silent, her gaze fixed on the ghostly fleet. "Let's get closer. I want a detailed scan of these vessels. Be on the lookout for any data logs or black boxes." As the Endeavour navigated through the derelict ships, Chief Engineer Santos called out from his console, "Captain, I'm picking up faint energy signatures. It's like these ships are still alive in some way." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the atmosphere thick with apprehension. Diaz, working her console, suddenly froze. I think I see something, there on that cruiser. It looks like a figure." The crew's attention snapped to the indicated ship. For a fleeting moment they saw a shadowy form drifting through the wreckage, its features obscured and ghost-like. Harper swallowed hard, his attempt at bravado fading. "Tell me someone else saw that. Please." Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems flickered wildly and a burst of static filled the bridge. Then a voice, garbled and distant, emanated from the speakers. "Help! Us! Trapped! In the maw!" The crew listened in stunned silence, the voice echoing the dread that had settled in their hearts. Captain Merk, her expression grim, turned to her crew. "We need to find the source of that transmission. There might be survivors." Zheng interjected, his voice a mix of skepticism and hope. "Or it could be a recording, looping through time. This place plays tricks with reality." As they continued their exploration, the Endeavour came across a ship remarkably intact. Its hull bore the insignia of a long-lost exploration vessel, the Artemis. "We should board it," suggested Santos. "If there are answers to be found, they might be in there." Merk nodded. "Prepare for a boarding operation. Diaz, Harper, Zheng, you're with me. Santos, keep the Endeavour ready for immediate departure." The boarding party, armed with tools and sensors, made their way to the Artemis. Inside, they found a ship frozen in time, its corridors silent and haunting. The crew's belongings were still in place, creating a chilling snapshot of lives abruptly halted. As they delved deeper into the ship, Harper, His voice barely above a whisper said, "It's like they just vanished. No signs of struggle, no bodies. Just gone." The team eventually found the bridge where the main data logs were stored. Jung worked quickly to extract the files, his hands shaking slightly. "We've got something," he announced. "Downloading the logs now." As the data transferred, a sudden chill permeated the air, and a sense of dread washed over the team. They hurried back to the Endeavor, the feeling of unseen eyes watching them growing stronger with every step. Back on the bridge, Captain Merk reviewed the logs, her face illuminated by the screen's ghostly light. The final entries spoke of a terrifying encounter, of reality warping around the crew, of madness and despair. The Endeavor continued its journey deeper into the galactic maw, the echoes of the lost haunting every corner of the ship. The crew, once confident and determined, now faced the growing realization that they might share the same fate as those who had come before them. The Endeavor delved deeper into the galactic maw, its crew increasingly on edge. The Anomaly's influence became more pronounced, warping the very fabric of the ship's reality. Lights flickered erratically, and shadows seemed to move just beyond the corner of one's eye. "Is it just me, or is it getting colder in here?" muttered Ensign Harper, pulling his jacket tighter around him. Lieutenant Diaz, her eyes never leaving her console, replied dryly, "It's not the temperature, Harper. It's the creeping dread." The crew tried to focus on their tasks, but the oppressive atmosphere of the maw made concentration difficult. Strange sounds echoed through the ship's corridors, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. Captain Merk called a meeting in the mess hall, hoping to rally her crew. "Listen up, everyone. I know things are strange, but we need to stay focused and stick together." Dr. Zheng, looking more haggard than usual, chimed in. "Focus is a bit hard to maintain when the laws of physics are taking a holiday, Captain." Chief Engineer Santos, checking his handheld scanner, added, "And it's not just physics. Our equipment is acting up. Readings are all over the place, as if the ship is reacting to the anomaly." As they discussed their next course of action, a sudden clatter from the other end of the mess hall startled them. A tray had fallen to the floor, seemingly on its own. "Maybe it's just the ship settling," Harper suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Ships don't settle in space, Ensign," retorted Diaz, her eyes scanning the room warily. The incidents grew more frequent and more unsettling. Crew members reported seeing figures in their peripheral vision, only for them to vanish when they turned to look. Personal items disappeared and reappeared in impossible places. One night, as Diaz stood watch on the bridge, she heard her name whispered. She spun around, but the room was empty. Shaken, she reported the incident to Captain Merk. "It's like this place is alive, playing tricks on us," Diaz said, her composure fraying at the edges. Helena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay strong, Lieutenant. We can't let it get to us." But the phenomenon was relentless. Harper, usually the one to crack jokes, grew increasingly silent, jumping at the slightest sound. Jung became obsessed with deciphering the anomaly, poring over data with a frenzied intensity. Then, during a routine check of the lower decks, a crew member vanished without a trace. An exhaustive search of the ship yielded no clues, only deepening the mystery and fear. "We're losing our grip here, Captain," Santos admitted, his face etched with worry. "We need to find a way out of this nightmare." Captain Merk, though feeling the strain herself, remained resolute. "We'll find a way," she declared, more to convince herself than her crew. "We have to." The Endeavor pressed on, its crew caught in a web of surreal and terrifying phenomena, the whispers in the dark, a constant unnerving companion. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving them to wonder what horrors lay ahead in the heart of the galactic maw. The Endeavor continued its perilous journey through the galactic maw, its crew trapped in an ever-tightening grip of fear and paranoia. The ship's corridors echoed with an eerie silence, punctuated only by the occasional creak and groan of the hull. In the dimly lit bridge, Captain Merk and her crew worked tirelessly to find a way out of the anomaly. Dr. Liam Zheng, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, pored over the latest data, a look of growing realization on his face. I think it's aware of us, Jung muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The anomaly, it's not just a cosmic phenomenon, it's sentient. Lieutenant Diaz, who was manning the navigation console, shot a skeptical glance at Jung. Sentient? Like, it has a mind of its own? Jung nodded, his hands trembling slightly. Yes, and I believe it's observing us, studying us. A nervous chuckle escaped from Ensign Harper. Great, we're like lab rats in a cosmic experiment. Maybe it'll give us a giant space cheese as a reward. His attempt at humor fell flat, the tense atmosphere suffocating any semblance of levity. Captain Merk, her face etched with concern, leaned in. Doctor, if this entity is sentient, what does it want from us? Jung shook his head, his expression grim. I don't know, Captain, but it's powerful, beyond anything we've encountered. It's manipulating space and time around us. The crew fell silent, the weight of Jung's words hanging heavy in the air. The ship shuddered suddenly, as if in response to their conversation, sending a ripple of unease through the room. Did the ship just respond to what we said? Harper asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's possible, Santos, the chief engineer, replied, his eyes wide with fear. It feels like we're being watched, listened to. The crew's sense of isolation deepened, the feeling of being observed by an unseen, incomprehensible entity, gnawing at their sanity. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking presence, every sound a whisper from the void. Diaz, trying to maintain a semblance of control, announced, I'm adjusting our course, trying to find a pattern in the anomaly's structure. Maybe there's a way out. But the ship's instruments were erratic, the readings fluctuating wildly. The Endeavor seemed to be moving in circles, the anomaly's influence turning their path into an endless maze. As the hours passed, the crew's morale frayed further. Meals were eaten in silence, each member lost in their thoughts, haunted by the sensation of being under constant surveillance. During one sleepless night, Harper confided in Jung. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Doc. I see things, hear things. Is it the anomaly, or am I just going crazy? Jung, looking equally haggard, replied softly, I don't know, Ensign. In this place, madness and reality are one and the same. The Endeavor pushed on, its crew trapped in a surreal nightmare, the unseen observer ever present, watching their every move, listening to their every word. The true nature of the galactic maw remained a mystery, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, its intentions as dark and unfathomable as the void itself. The Endeavor continued its harrowing journey through the galactic maw, the ship and its crew now fully ensnared in the anomaly's enigmatic grasp. The once familiar walls of the ship felt alien and foreboding, as if they had taken on a life of their own. Captain Merk sat in her chair on the bridge, her eyes reflecting the dim glow of the control panels. The crew moved about their tasks mechanically, their expressions haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Dr. Jung, his face haggard from endless hours of research, approached the captain with a troubled look. Captain, the phenomenon is intensifying. I'm starting to see patterns in the chaos. It's like the anomaly is projecting its thoughts into our minds. Lieutenant Diaz, overhearing the conversation, turned from her console. Thoughts? You mean this thing is communicating with us? Jung nodded solemnly. In a way. It's not using words, but images, emotions. It's overwhelming. Ensign Harper, who had been quietly monitoring the communications array, let out a dry laugh. Well, if it's trying to scare the hell out of us, it's doing a great job. The crew shared a brief, tense chuckle, but the levity was short-lived. The anomaly's influence was growing stronger, its unseen presence more oppressive. Santos, the chief engineer, called out from his station. Captain, I'm seeing massive fluctuations in the power grid. It's like the ship is being pulled apart and stitched back together. Captain Merk stood up, her resolve unbroken. We need to maintain control. Santos, do what you can to stabilize the systems. Zheng, keep trying to make sense of the anomalies. Messages. As the crew worked to keep the ship functioning, the reality around them began to warp in earnest. The corridors seemed to stretch into infinity, the walls pulsing with a life of their own. The crew's nightmares bled into their waking hours, visions of cosmic horror that defied comprehension. Diaz, while navigating through the shifting corridors, muttered to herself, "This is like some twisted maze. Every turn feels like a step deeper into madness." The ship's intercom crackled to life spontaneously, emitting a cacophony of voices and sounds, none of which were human. Harper, working frantically to shut it off, exclaimed, "It's like we're listening to the chatter of the universe, and it's not a friendly conversation." In the mess hall, the crew gathered in silence, their meals untouched. The air was thick with unspoken fears and questions. Zheng, breaking the silence, spoke in a haunted whisper. "We're part of it now, part of the Ma's consciousness. It's showing us the universe through its eyes, and it's a view filled with terror and awe." The crew looked at each other, their faces a mix of fear and fascination. They were no longer just explorers. They were unwilling participants in a cosmic drama beyond their understanding. The Endeavor continued its descent into the heart of the anomaly, the boundary between reality and nightmare completely eroded. The crew, each battling their own demons, faced an uncertain future, unsure whether they would ever escape the clutches of the galactic maw, or if they were doomed to become part of its eternal, inscrutable existence. Aboard the Endeavor, trapped within the galactic maw, reality itself seemed to unravel. The once familiar confines of the ship had become a labyrinth of ever-shifting corridors and rooms that appeared and disappeared without reason. Captain Merk, trying to maintain a semblance of order, called for a status meeting in the bridge. The crew assembled, each member looking more weary and disheveled than the last. Dr. Zheng, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting the walls to shift, began the briefing. The anomaly. It's not just warping space, it's warping time too. Our perceptions are being twisted. Lieutenant Diaz, leaning against a console for support, added, "We tried to chart a course back to the edge of the anomaly, but it's like we're stuck in a loop. Every time we think we're making progress, we end up back where we started." Ensign Harper, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up with a shaky voice. "It's like being in a bad dream and you can't wake up. You run and run, but you're just running in place." The crew shared a collective weary nod, each understanding all too well the feeling Harper described. Chief Engineer Santos, monitoring the ship's fluctuating systems, interjected, "It's more than that. It's like the ship itself is becoming part of the anomaly. Systems are merging with whatever this thing is." Captain Merk, standing firm despite the chaos, tried to rally her crew. "We can't let this entity, or whatever it is, break us. We're still a crew, and our priority is to find a way out of this." The crew set to work, attempting once more to navigate through the distorted reality of the maw. They worked in shifts, though the concept of time had become meaningless. Sleeping and waking hours blended together into a continuous, disorienting nightmare. During one such shift, Harper and Diaz found themselves in what used to be the navigation room, now barely recognizable. The walls pulsed with a strange, organic rhythm, and the instruments had merged into bizarre alien configurations. Diaz, staring at the pulsating walls, said half-jokingly, "Maybe if we ask nicely, it'll spit us out?" Harper, fiddling with a console that seemed to be part machine, part something else, replied, "Yeah, and maybe it'll apologize for the inconvenience." Their attempts at humor did little to lift the oppressive atmosphere, but it provided a momentary respite from the unending tension. As they continued their efforts, the ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. A deep, resonant sound, like the groan of some colossal beast, echoed through the hull. Zheng, looking up from his work, murmured, "It's reacting to us. Our actions, our thoughts. It's all connected." The crew pressed on, Each step forward met with resistance from the ever-changing reality around them. Efforts to map their progress were futile. The ship's layout altered with each passing moment. In the mess hall, a rare moment of downtime found the crew attempting to take solace in shared company. Santos, trying to lighten the mood, said, "You know, when I signed up for this mission, I was worried about alien encounters, not becoming part of an alien mind trip." Diaz, managing a tired smile, responded, "I'll take a good old-fashioned alien encounter over this any day." The banter was short-lived as the ship lurched again, a reminder of the relentless, unseen force that held them in its grasp. The Endeavour and its crew, caught in the fractured reality of the galactic maw, continued their struggle to find a way back to the universe they knew, a universe that seemed more like a distant dream with each passing moment. The situation aboard the Endeavour, now a captive of the enigmatic and terrifying galactic maw, had grown increasingly dire. The crew, battered by the relentless assault on their senses and sanity, gathered in the bridge, a room that felt less and less familiar each day. Dr. Zheng, his face gaunt and eyes burning with a feverish intensity, addressed Captain Merck and the crew. "I've been analyzing the data, the patterns we've seen. I think there might be a way to disrupt the Anomaly's hold on us." Lieutenant Diaz, leaning wearily against a console, raised her eyebrows. "Disrupt it? How? We don't even understand what it is." Zheng took a deep breath, steadying himself. "The ship's core reactor. If we modify it to emit a specific frequency, it might create a resonance effect. It could give us a window to escape." Ensign Harper, his usual humor dulled by the ordeal, looked up. "Sounds risky. What's the catch?" Zheng hesitated, then said, "The modifications, they'll require someone to manually adjust the reactor. It's a one-way trip." A heavy silence fell over the crew. The implication of Zheng's plan was clear. It required a sacrifice. Captain Merck, her voice steady but heavy with emotion, spoke up. "We can't ask anyone to make that sacrifice. There must be another way." Zheng shook his head, a mixture of resolve and resignation in his eyes. "There isn't. I've run the simulations. This is our only shot." Santos, the chief engineer, broke the silence. "If it gives the rest of you a chance, then I'll do it." The crew protested, but Santos held up his hand. "No, I've made my decision. Let's focus on getting this plan to work." The next hours were a blur of activity as the crew worked to implement Zheng's plan. Amidst the tension, there were moments of camaraderie, the crew drawing strength from each other. As Santos prepared to make the modifications, Diaz approached him. "You're one hell of an engineer, Santos. If anyone can pull this off, it's you." Santos managed a weak smile. "Just make sure you guys throw a big party when you get back. I'll be there in spirit." Harper, standing nearby, added, "We'll name a drink after you. The Santos special. It'll be strong and reliable, just like you." Santos chuckled, the sound tinged with sadness. "I'd like that." The crew watched in solemn silence as Santos made his way to the reactor room, his steps determined. Zheng and the captain coordinated from the bridge, guiding him through the modifications. As the reactor's hum grew to a crescendo, the ship shuddered, the maw's grip weakening. The Endeavour lurched forward, propelled by the disruption in the Anomaly. Santos's voice came over the intercom, strained but resolute. "It's working. The path is clearing. You've got a shot. Now go." Captain Merck, tears in her eyes, gave the order. "Full speed ahead. Let's get out of here." As the Endeavour hurtled towards freedom, the crew's thoughts were with Santos, left behind in the heart of the galactic maw, his sacrifice their beacon of hope in the dark void. The ship broke through the boundary of the Anomaly, emerging into the starlit expanse of normal space. But their victory was bittersweet, the cost of their escape a reminder of the unfathomable mysteries and dangers that lay beyond the known universe. The Endeavour, propelled by the heroic sacrifice of Santos, surged towards the boundary of the galactic maw. The crew, despite their exhaustion and grief, prepared for what they hoped would be their final push to freedom. Captain Merck stood resolute at the helm, her eyes fixed on the view screen. "Everyone, brace yourselves. This might get rough." Lieutenant Diaz, her hands firmly on the navigation controls, replied, "After everything we've seen, a little turbulence sounds like a vacation." The ship shuddered as it navigated the turbulent space warped by the anomaly. The fabric of reality seemed to tear and stitch itself back together around them. Dr. Zeng, monitoring the energy readings, called it out. "The anomaly is reacting. It's like it's trying to pull us back in." Ensign Harper, strapped into his seat, tried to inject a bit of levity into the dire situation. "Tell it we're breaking up. It's not us. It's definitely it." Despite the tension, a few crew members managed a weary smile. But the moment of levity was short-lived as the ship was suddenly gripped by a powerful force, halting their progress. Captain Merck, gripping the armrests of her chair, shouted, "Full power to the engines. We can't let it hold us." The Endeavor's engines roared to life, straining against the unseen force that sought to drag them back into the abyss. The ship trembled violently, the sound deafening. Jung, his eyes wide with fear, yelled over the din, "The structural integrity is failing. We can't take much more of this." Diaz, fighting to keep the ship on course, added, "We're so close. We can make it." The crew held their breath as the Endeavor strained against the maw's grasp. The boundary of the anomaly loomed ahead, a thin line of hope amidst the darkness. Then, with a final, desperate effort, the ship broke free of the anomaly's grip. They emerged into normal space, the stars shining brightly outside the view screen. For a moment there was silence on the bridge, the crew too stunned to speak. Then, Harper let out a whoop of joy. "We did it. We actually did it." Diaz, her relief palpable, said, "I never want to see anything even remotely resembling a black hole ever again." Captain Merck, allowing herself a moment of relief, said, "Let's head home. We have a lot to report, and we owe it to Santos to tell the world what happened here." As the Endeavor set a course back to Earth, the crew took a moment to process their ordeal. They had escaped the clutches of the galactic maw, but the scars of their journey would remain with them forever. The universe had shown them its darkest secrets, and they had survived, but not unscathed. The journey home would be long, and the memory of what they had lost and what they had witnessed would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The Endeavor, battered and scarred, was finally free from the grip of the galactic maw. The crew, though relieved to be escaping, couldn't shake off the overwhelming sense of dread that clung to them like a second skin. The loss of Santos and the harrowing experiences within the anomaly had left deep, indelible marks on their souls. As they journeyed back towards Earth, Captain Merck stood silently at the view screen, her eyes lost in the sea of stars. "We are not the same people who started this journey," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Lieutenant Diaz, who had been running diagnostics on the navigation systems, replied softly, "No, we're not. But we're alive, and that's something." The crew busied themselves with their duties, each lost in their thoughts, when suddenly, the ship's alarms blared to life. The view screen showed a massive, pulsating energy surge rapidly approaching them from behind. Dr. Zheng, analyzing the data, exclaimed, "It's the anomaly. It's followed us, or pulled us back." The revelation hit the crew like a physical blow. The safety and normalcy of space they thought they had reclaimed were illusions, a fleeting respite in the unrelenting horror of the maw. Ensign Harper, his voice tinged with fear and disbelief, said, "We can't go back there. We just can't." Captain Merck, her face a mask of determination, took command. "We won't. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We'll outrun it." But the Endeavor was no match for the speed and power of the anomaly. The maw engulfed the ship, dragging it back into its depths. Reality warped around them, a swirling vortex of colors and sounds that defied understanding. Inside the ship, the crew clung to whatever they could as their world turned upside down. The familiar became alien, the laws of physics mere suggestions in the chaos that enveloped them. Diaz, struggling to maintain control of the navigation console, shouted, "It's tearing the ship apart." Zheng, his voice a mix of terror and awe, said, "It's not just the ship, it's us. It's rewriting reality itself." In the final moments, as the Endeavour and its crew faced their inevitable end, they experienced a shared, horrifying revelation. The Anomaly, the galactic maw, was more than just a cosmic phenomenon. It was a sentient entity, ancient and incomprehensible, its motives and existence beyond human understanding. As the ship and crew were consumed, their minds touched the entity's consciousness, a brief merging of human and cosmic awareness. In those fleeting seconds, they understood the insignificance of their existence in the vast, uncaring universe. And then there was nothing. The Endeavour and its crew were gone, absorbed into the galactic maw, their story ending not with a triumphant return, but with a silent, eternal embrace in the heart of the Anomaly. The universe continued on, indifferent to the fate of the Endeavour and its crew. The galactic maw remained, a silent, insatiable presence in the void, waiting for the next unwary travelers to cross its path.